Good morning, friends. Today we will be discussing about raster data input. But before we actually start the discussion on raster data input, we need to know why input is important. Friends, it has been found that almost 80% of the time, the geographers, the scientists in the domain of GIS are busy with input. You can just imagine the 80% of the effort for a GIS software is devoted to just input. And at the same time, you can also imagine that if 80% of the time is devoted to input and input is not done properly, the remaining 20% is also not going to yield the expected results. Generally, in the terms of software engineering, we say that it is a 80-20 rule. By 80-20 rule, we mean that if we have done the 80% of input correctly, the remaining 20% analysis will be done correctly. In other words, we can put it like this. If the input is correct, the processing will be correct and the analysis is going to be correct. If the input is not correct, irrespective, regardless of the processing, the output is not going to yield the expected results. So there is a lot of importance of input. And at the same time, we also know that the images given by digital cameras, if we are talking about satellites, if we are talking about remote sensing, if we are talking about aerial photography, all these images are basically in the raster format. And this is the reason why we need to discuss about the raster data input. Again, before we specifically start about the raster data input, let me also focus upon on the sidelines of this discussion. Let me also focus upon one point which has been actually skipped in the discussion of yesterday's topic of GPS. Friends, we have already seen what GPS is and what GPS is not. But at the same time, we have many instances where the two terms GPS and GPRS have been used interchangeably. Given the fact that we are working in the domain of GIS, geoinformatics, GPS, GRF, we need to know the difference between GPS and GPRS. First of all, these two terms cannot be used interchangeably. It is not one and the same thing. When we are talking about GPS, we are talking about global positioning system. We are talking about a constellation of the satellites. When we are talking about GPRS, which stands for General Packet Radio Service, we are basically talking about data transfer. So we can say that GPRS is basically a technology which is used by the mobile phones for sending SMS, for browsing the internet, for checking emails. Also, we can say that for working, GPS requires satellites, whereas, and again a set of satellites, not just one satellite, whereas GPRS requires a terrestrial tower, which in general parlance we say that I am not having the network of the tower on my mobile phone. At that time, we are actually not talking about GPS, we are talking about GPRS. So this is just to highlight the difference between GPS and GPRS. Let us come to our discussion of raster data input. Basically, there are 5 methods by which raster data can be input. These methods are: number 1, presence absence method; number 2, centroid of cell method; number 3, dominant type method; number 4, percent occurrence method; and number 5, most important type method. Let us discuss each of these methods one by one. We begin our discussion with the presence absence method. If an object or an entity occurs in a cell anywhere, it is recorded as present. When I am saying about object, when I am using the term entity, we need to know what do we mean by object or entity. Friends, this scenario is quite clear. We have already seen that whatever we are able to see in the real world, be it rivers, mountains, forests, animals, human beings, industries, hospitals, hotels, institutions, cities, industrial areas, anything that we are able to see in the real world. All these things, anything that is present on the terrain surface of the earth can be represented in a GIS using three symbols. These three symbols are number one, point, which is 0-dimensional, number two, line, which is 1-dimensional, number three, area, which is 2-dimensional, and number three, surfaces, which are actually 3-dimensional. So when we are talking about the input methods, basically we are talking about the circumstances where we are supposed to input the information about either point or line or area or a collection of these to the GIS system. For example, we may have a scenario where we have a river, and on the banks of the river we have a hotel also. So in parlance of GIS, we will say that we want to input a line where we have represented the river as a line, and the hotel we will be representing as a point. So when we are talking about the input methods specifically for the raster system, we will be talking about input of point, line, and area. And we will also be discussing the advantages and disadvantages of each of these methods one by one. The real world objects, the real world things, or the real world entities, as I said, be it river, forest, anything, they are represented using point, line, area in the raster system. And when we are placing a grid, as we have seen yesterday also, that raster system deals with a grid. Basically, it is a matrix where the intersection of a row and a column gives us a cell, which happens to be the smallest unit of the raster system. So if any object occurs somewhere in this cell, it is recorded as present, otherwise it is recorded as absent. It is the best method for coding points and lines. It is easy. Actually, these are the characteristics of the presence-absence method. Be it easy, be it Boolean, it uses yes-no approach, it is simple. Before we discuss these characteristics of this method theoretically, let us first practically see how this can be coded. So we will be first taking an example of each of these methods one by one, and then we will see the characteristics of each of these methods. Suppose we have some river that we will be representing as a line in the raster system. When we are talking about raster system, we are talking about a grid. So here is the grid. For sake of simplicity, I am keeping the resolution of the cells quite coarse. So basically this is a grid of size 5 by 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if we are talking about the presence-absence method, as is very much evident from the name itself, we just have to see whether the entity is present or absent in a given cell. Let us say if we are representing the river by 1 and the absence of the entity by 0, then this will be encoded as 0 because the line is not passing from this cell, or using the parallels of this term presence-absence method, the entity is absent here, it is again absent here. Here a part of the river is going through this cell, so we will record it as 1. Again 0, 0, 0, river is passing from here, so 1, 1, 0, 0. For all remaining cells it will be 0 because it is not passing from these cells. Here it is passing, so we will say 1, 1, 1, and here we will say 0. So that is why this method is called presence-absence method, and that is why this method is also called yes-no method. If the entity is present, we will say 1. If the entity is absent, we will say 0. Friends, it is not necessary that we have to always use these two numbers, 1 and 0. It just depends. In any case, the abscess can always be indicated using 0. But the presence, for example, if I am representing a water body by 1, I will use 1. But instead of saying that this is a river, if this is a highway and I am representing highways using the number 2, what I will do is 0, 0, 2, 0, 0, 0, 2, 2, 0, 0. That means instead of 1, I can use some other number also. Moving on to the next method. First, we will discuss each of these methods with an example, and then we will see the characteristics of each of these methods. The second method is centroid of cell method. The logic behind centroid of cell method is, for each cell, we need to calculate the centroid of the cell, and then we have to see whether the entity that we are trying to map, the entity that we are trying to input in the raster grid, whether that entity is present on the centroid of the cell or not. Let me continue with the same scenario. But instead of presence absence method, this time we will be talking about centroid of the cell method. The entity is not passing from this cell, so in any case it will remain 0, 0. Here for case of presence absence method, we had recorded 1 because a part of the river was flowing from this cell. So we recorded 1. But in case of centroid of cell method, we can see that this river is neither touching nor it is passing from the centroid of the cell. And how do we calculate the centroid of the cell? The calculation of centroid of the cell is simple. This is a cell. And if we take the diagonals, the intersection of these diagonals will give us the centroid of the cell. And as it is not passing from the centroid of the cell, so instead of 1, here we will be recording 0. So here comes the difference. The same entity using a different method is now being encoded differently. In case of presence absence method, we have recorded 1 and now we are recording 0. Similarly, here it will also be 0. Here it is also not crossing the centroid, so it will be 0, 0. Here it is crossing the centroid of the cell, so it will be 1. Again, here it will be 0. One question might be there that for this kind of representation of the river, you can see that almost all the cells are recorded as 0 except for the one cell. And probably if the river is flowing like something like this, where it is not touching the centroid of the cell, again it will be recorded as 0. So the question is, why do we use the centroid of the cell method? The answer is very simple. It is up to the geographer to decide based on his experience, based on the requirement of the system, based on the purpose for which the system is being developed, based on the entity which is being encoded, whether to use presence absence method or centroid of cell method, or for that matter, any other method. Moving on to the next method, we have dominant type method. The logic behind dominant type method is that if an entity covers 50% or more than 50% of the area being encoded, then that cell will be coded as 1, otherwise it will be coded as 0. So continuing with the same example, we can see that this cell is not covering this cell is not covering 50% or more, so it will remain 0. Again, this will remain 0. This will remain 0. This is covering more than 50%, so we will record it as 1. And this will also be 0. And at the same time, we also need to keep in mind that this is a typical scenario where many cells are being recorded as 0 and others are recorded as 1. But at the same time, we also need to keep in mind that this example is typical because we are considering a river for a body. Instead of river, if I am trying to encode some area, we have point, line, area and surface. We are taking the example of line. Instead of line, if we are talking about area, naturally all these cells will become 1. These 3 cells will be 1 in case of presence absence method also, in case of centroid of cell method also, because this shaded portion is the area that we are trying to cover. So in case of presence absence method also this will be 1, in case of centroid of cell method also this will be 1, in case of dominant type method also all these 3 cells will be 1. In fact, these 2 will also be 1. Now this is the typical scenario. In case of presence absence, this will be 1. In case of centroid of cell, this will be 0. In case of dominant type, Again, this will be 0. Now, moving on to the next method, we have percent occurrence method. The percent occurrence method is based on the presence absence method, with the difference that instead of just recording whether an entity is present or not, the presence or absence of the entity, we are also recording the quantity of presence. That means how much portion of that entity is present in that cell. For instance, for this location, because this entire area is covered in this cell, we will say 100. Here also we will say 100. Here we can see that the entire area is not being covered in the cell. It is almost 95%. So we will, instead of saying 1 or 0, we will say it is 95. Here again it will be 100, 100. Here we can see that it is almost 15%. So we will say 15 and so on. Obviously here it will mean 0, 0, 0, 0 and so on. The important thing about the percent occurrence method is that just stating the percentage of an entity partially is not sufficient. We need also to complement this grid by another grid based on the number of the themes. So we have another grid again of the same size, that means 5 by 5. Here it was 100, so we will put 0 because 0 plus 100 is equal to 100. 100, 0. Now here comes 95, and we need to complement it so that the total is 100 because the name of the method is percent occurrence. Percent we know is 100, so we have to make sure that the total is 100. Here it was 95, so we will put 5. Here it was 0, so we will put 100. Again 0, so we will put 100. Friends, the logic is very simple. Let us say this shaded area is a water body. That means from the GIS perspective, either it is land area or water area. And if I am using a thematic map with the theme of water, I will say that 100% water, 100% water, 95% water, accordingly complemented by 0% land, 0% land, 95% water, so 5% land, 0% water, so 100% land, and so on. This is about the percent occurrence method. Now coming to the last method, the most important type method. As is not evident, I repeat, as is not evident from its name, this method is actually not the most important type method. Honestly speaking, scientifically speaking, this is the worst method. But the geographers have given its name as most important type method, and actually for the professional geographers this method is not used. But you can find the literature which is discussing about this method. The logic behind this method is very simple. It is just one statement. Whether to encode an entity or not just depends on the decision of the geographer. You can just imagine that it is such an unscientific method. If the geographer or the scientist decides I have to encode that entity, the person will put 1. And if the person decides I do not want to encode that entity, irrespective of, regardless of the actual presence, the physical presence of that entity, the person will put 0. That means, obviously, no scientist will be that much irrational, but still, it is not treated as a scientific method. Let us take one example of most important type method. The scenario could be something like this. Entity is present here, I will put 1. Entity is present here, I will put 1. Entity is present here, but it is partially present. So now it is up to the decision of the scientist. If he feels that I will put 1, he will put 1. If he feels I will put 0, he will put 0. And this is also the reason why this method is very unscientific. Now, having discussed all these methods, we can also discuss the extremes of these methods. As we discussed that there are some entities which will be recorded as 0. That means the absence of the entity will be recorded using all the methods. At the same time, we also have methods which may record the presence of that method. So we have two extremes. We cannot have one method which gives us all 1s, or we cannot have one method which gives us all 0s. The question is which method to use. Given the fact that we have 5 methods, obviously we will ignore the most important type method because it is very much unscientific and irrational method. So ignoring the most important type method, we are left with 4 options. Now the question is which one of these 4 methods to be used? And the answer is very simple. It just depends. We cannot fix. We cannot say with surety that we cannot make it a standard that we have always to use the presence absence method or centroid of cell method or dominant type method or percent difference method. It just depends on the scenario. It just depends on the purpose for which we are encoding the entity. It also depends on the entity that we are encoding. We have just seen that if it was a river, the encoding was giving us different results, and when we are encoding an area, it is giving us different results. So it depends on the logic why we are using that entity, and it depends on the entity actually to be encoded and what is the purpose of the analysis. So these are the reasons which govern the decision behind the usage of one of these four methods. I again repeat that most important type method is the one that needs to be avoided. So having discussed the basics of each of these methods, now let us discuss the characteristics of these methods one by one. And I suppose the discussion of characteristics now will be more clear having discussed the logic behind each of these methods. The presence absence method will record an entity as present or absent if it passes or covers this partial portion of the cell or the entire cell. It is best method for coding points and lines for the obvious reason of simplicity. This is a very easy method because you just have to deal with the logic whether it is present or absent. We do not need to have any calculations. For instance, we have in the case of centroid of cell method, we need to calculate the centroid, and we also have calculations in case of dominant type method where we need to calculate the centroid of the cell, and then we need to check whether the entity is actually touching or passing through the centroid of the cell. So such calculations are not there in the presence absence method. So it is very easy. It is a Boolean method because it is a yes-no type of approach. It is a very simple method. Generally, the beginners always use this method, presence absence method. The next one is centroid of cell method. The presence of an entity is recorded only if it is at the center of the cell. Obviously, for that we first need to calculate the center of the cell. It is less simple. It requires calculations of centroid as well as the location of object that we are willing to encode relative to the centroid. Large information is lost. Actually, information will be lost if the entity is not touching or passing from the centroid. And at the same time, we can also say that in case of presence absence method also large information is lost, as we have just seen. This method is best suited for encoding of polygons because the probability that the area of a polygon, as we know that polygon is an enclosed figure, the probability that the polygon will be passing from the centroid of the cell or the centroid of the cell will be within the boundaries of the polygons is quite high. That probability is quite high. So this method is better suited for encoding of polygons. The dominant type method, entity is encoded as present if it occupies more than 50% of the cell. It is commonly used for encoding polygons. Naturally, if we are talking about encoding of points and lines, it would not be wise to do a lot of calculations. And so same was the case with the previous method, centroid of the cell method also. And that is why in case of presence absence method, it was written that this is the best method for encoding points and lines. For polygons, we have either dominant type method and the centroid of the cell method. The dominant type method is problematic for irregular shapes. Just imagine a polygon, because in real world, it is not guaranteed that we will be finding regular shapes. We cannot have a river which is like a straight line, or we cannot have national boundaries or international boundaries or the water bodies which are exactly having a geometric shape, square, rectangle, circle. So just imagine a scenario where the boundaries of the polygons are just touching the corners of the cells. All four corners of the cell are being touched, but it is not covering the 50%. So it will not be encoded. So that is the problem. Heavy calculations are required. Why? Because first we need to calculate the 50% of the cell, and then we need to check whether the entity is within that range or not. Percent occurrence method. As I just said, it not only encodes the presence or absence, but the percent of occurrence also. I had taken the example of water area and land area. We can have another scenario, urban area and rural area. Friends, we need to remember that whenever we are talking about two themes, basically we are talking about thematic maps because we are concentrating on just one theme. In such a scenario, we need to remember that both these themes need to complement each other. For example, if some area is having water, it will not be land. If it is land, it will not be water. If some area is rural, it will not be urban. If it is urban, it will not be rural. Similarly, we can have a scenario where we have industrial area and residential area. If it will be industrial, it will not be residential. So the point is that the themes that we are considering, they should be complementing each other. Now, having taken the example of urban, rural, water, land, industrial, residential, let me make it very clear that it is not necessary that we need just to have two themes, because in all these three examples we have considered two themes. The number of themes may be up to 5, 6, it just depends. Let us say we have a scenario where we have three themes. For first theme, let us say we are recording 10. That means for the remaining two themes, we will be recording a part of 90. Maybe something like 10, 20, 70. 10 plus 20 plus 70 will give us a total of 100. So the point is that it is not necessary that you need to have only two themes. It just depends. And frankly speaking, in real world, we find the conditions, we find the topography where we have always more than two themes. For percent occurrence method, each attribute is recorded as a separate coverage. Basically, it creates a thematic map and they should complement each other properly. The calculations are difficult. Naturally, if we are not able to make the total of 100, that means something is problematic. But again, the question is, if we have three themes, let us say 10, 20 and 70, but instead of 70, last one is 65. So the total will be 95. But how do we come to know that the problem is with first theme or with second theme or with third theme? Friends, just imagine this was an example of three themes. And if there are 5 themes, how would we come to know that the problem was with which one of those 5 themes? So that is why it is said that the calculations are difficult, and it is very important that the thematic maps complement each other and they complement each other properly. More is the number of themes, naturally, more are the problems, more is the complexity, more is the difficulty, more calculations we need to do, we need to be more careful. We have already taken the example, and this case shows one grid of percent urban, one of percent rural, percent water, percent forest, etc. Now moving on to the last method of our discussion, most important type method. It is based on the user's knowledge and decision making capability. Obviously, the experience of the person does play an important role. But more than that, it is the discretion of the person that decides whether to encode an entity or not. It is the simplest method for the obvious reason that it just depends on the discretion of the user. But at the same time, as I said, that it is also the most irrational method, most unscientific method. And I would personally never recommend this method to be used for the professional softwares to be developed. Before we wind up, as part of the concluding remarks, the last slide, number one, two extremes of recording being done using each method and not done using each method are to be considered. We have already seen the examples of this scenario. Two extremes means we have an entity and we may find one method which is encoding that entity and all other methods are not encoding it. At the same time, we have another entity in the same map which is not being recorded by the first method, where it was recording the first entity. and all other methods are encoding this entity. So we are in a dilemma. Which method to use? The next point is possibility of hybrid method. Friends, we have always seen that whenever we have options of multiple methods, we generally say that the last method is always there, and that is the hybrid method. Basically, the hybrid method is the combination of all other methods, not necessarily all other methods, maybe all methods, maybe a few of them, but it is basically a combination. It is basically the mingling of all those methods. Now, what about the hybrid approach for the raster data, given that we have 5 methods, or ignoring the last one, we have the 4 methods? The answer is very simple. We do not have any hybrid approach. For the obvious reason, if we are using hybrid approach, how would one at the time of analysis, because input is done only for analysis. Input in GIS is not done per se for just the sake of input. It is done, which is the final objective. The final objective is analysis. So how one would come to know that which method was used and how the entity was encoded? And in absence of this information, the analysis could not be done properly. So the hybrid approach is not an option when we are talking about raster data input. Which method to use? We already discussed. It depends on the scenario. It depends on the requirement. It depends on the analysis to be done. And it depends also on the type of entity that we are recording. Is it point? Is it line? Is it area? Each scheme has its own advantages and disadvantages, as we have just discussed. The last point, regardless of the method that we are using, whether we are using dominant type method or centroid of cell method, whatever method we are using, we need to remember that we need to have some additional information recorded as part of our data input process. Put in more simple words, what I mean to say is that, let us say we have used some method, and using that method we have done the input. The input process is over. Actually, it is not over, because we also need to record this information, because down the line, after 2 years, 3 years, or even months, it may not be remembered which input method was used, and the analysis will be obviously dependent on the input that we have done. Number one, so this is one reason that why we need to record which method was used. Second reason, in yesterday or day before yesterday's session, we had discussed about primary data and secondary data. If someone has recorded raster data as a primary data, and if that data is provided to someone else, how will the second person, for whom this is the secondary data, how will that person come to know which method was used? Obviously, just at looking at the grid, just looking at the encodings of zeros, ones, twos, or whatever values that we have used, it would not be evident that which method was used. So this is the second reason why we need to record it, why we need to document it, that this was the method that was used. Probably when we are providing this data as a secondary data to some other person, the person may not be very much happy if this data was recorded as most important type method, because that is very unscientific method. So metadata is actually, we define as data about data. And for these two reasons, it is very important to record the method that we have used. So role of metadata cannot be overruled. Thanks. We are open to questions.